Okay, good morning, guys. I'm Tim Neal, and this is your radio class. We're going to be covering your digital radio system, and here's your training code, multi-company drill radio 0002. It's 3 hours credit. It is going to take a couple of hours. We will have a break during this, okay? Here's what we're going to review. We're going to talk about the handheld radios that we've been out of them for 6 months. So we'll go over the parts of the radio. We'll talk about your apparatus radio as well, making your zone changes in there. Right now you're real good at making your talk group changes. We'll get to the zone changes. We'll talk about what kind of equipment issues that happened that got us into this trouble and what they did to correct it. We'll talk about how the fleet map is, and here's some copies of some fleet maps for you. And we'll talk about this new quadrant system and how things are going to work. We'll talk about how our day-to-day radio operations are going to happen on there, and when we make that cut over and what kind of backup we have to the system, and then we'll run through some exercises on it as well. Okay, so here's our radio. We got our on-off volume here, we have our push to talk, and we have our direct button down here. That direct button, that puts us into that simplex mode, and we'll have to be doing that for about 6 weeks when we get into this radio system. This is our bank button, then our zone button, then our talk group. The locking switch right here, that controls just the bank button and the direct button, just those two right there, nothing else. It's the only thing that can be locked on there. It shows it in the locked position right now, the 0 with the line through it, that is locked. O, think of it as being open, so that's unlocked. Okay? We're going to be carrying it in that locked position so that we don't accidentally change that bank button. Okay? So our talk groups, we got 240 of these. If you're looking at your fleet map, we got 240 of them on there. We have a bank, which is that top row going across. We have a zone, which is the second row of the ABC going across. And then we've got those numbers going down the columns 1 through 16. Okay? So to change our bank, you're going to unlock the switch over here. You're going to hit the button, the bank button, and then you're going to lock it back in place. As you're zoning, changing through your banks there, it goes A, B, C, D, E. Every time you hit it one time, it makes a verbal announcement. It'll tell you what you're in. When you get on the one you want to, lock it in place. When you get to E, it loops around back to A. You cannot go backwards in this one. Your zone button, or your zone switch. Just A, B, C, slide it back or forth. As you make changes on it, it's going to give you that voice prompt. Same thing with your bank button. So the bank or the zone, when you make a change on there, it makes a verbal announcement and says what you're in. You will navigate a little bit more on that zone switch than you do on the bank button. Then you got your talk group knob. You got 1 through 16 on there. There is no voice prompt on that, just like your radio today. The difference between your radio today and this one is that this knob is a little bit smaller. You don't have any backlight on it, but you don't need it because you've got a digital display there. Anytime you make a change to it, that screen will give some backlight for about 10 to 15 seconds, and then it'll go dim again. But that way you can verify what you're in. And this will give us an aerial view here. If you can see that box right there that has the letter A in it, in that box, that's your bank indicator. And then your zone indicator is just simply what position that it's in. Same thing with your talk group knob. But now you're verified that all three put together equal Southeast TAC 11. So Alpha 11 is Southeast TAC 11. Okay? Now we did have a feature change. When we started teaching these classes last summer, we figured out that we had a problem. That if you turned your radio off and you made a change to either the zone or the talk group, and then turned it back on, it didn't pick it up. So we got that fixed. We figured that was a real problem because you can change any of those on there. You know, you get back to the station, you didn't realize you were still on a TAC group, and then you go and turn it off. You want to get off that TAC group and put it on your regular response talk group. You make the change, turn it on, and now it'll pick that up. Your bank button will not change with the power turned off. So you can't accidentally change that or intentionally change that while it's off. Okay, your apparatus radio. We've gotten real good at using that talk group knob over there for scrolling up and down. If you have the update, yours will give you now the voice prompt on there when you turn on your apparatus as well. It gives you that Echo Bravo when you turn it on. If you get into a reserve and it doesn't give you that, then you need to contact the radio shop and have them get you updated for that. This thing will automatically power on when you either turn your ignition key or you turn your battery switch on. The power button on this thing is not active. So to navigate through your apparatus radio, there is no bank button. You're going to not navigate with your zone button. So if you look at your fleet map, right now we're in Echo Bravo, which is that last column to the right. If you're working on the day we make the switch over and you need to go into Alpha Alpha, you're going to hit your zone button. You're going to turn your selector knob one click to the right, and it will say HFD East OEC1 on there. You hit the house looking button, that locks it into place, and now you're in that Alpha Alpha zone, and all you have to do is change, this becomes a talk group selector knob. So really, you're not going to be navigating a whole bunch. You may have to go from east to west, which would involve, now we're in east, you hit the zone button, you give it one click to the right, it'll say west, hit the house button, lock it in, you're ready to go back, hit the zone button, go one to the left, west to east, lock it back in, back to that talk group control knob. You're really not going to have to be changing a whole bunch on that. Right now, especially out here, you're just going to be working with that control knob. If you were in an area like, say, 55s or 47s where you're going back and forth across the line, something like that, or you're at Station 6 where you're going north or south, or you're at Station 8 where you're going east and west, or 8s is actually in the spot where you could be going north, south, east, or west. So you could be in any one of those four talk groups. So really, you're only changing from east to west on there, and then you're changing your talk group knob. So if you were at 55s and you're that second truck in on the box going west into District 59, you're going to be responding on Alpha Alpha 10. You hit your zone button, you go click to the west, you hit your house button, lock it in, and now instead of being Alpha Alpha 10, now you're on Alpha Bravo 10 and you're ready to go. And I'll get a little more detailed on that in a minute. Okay, your radio now, the UHF radio that you're in right now, when you key up, all you get is a tone, and it makes that tone, and all it's checking is the radio itself. When you get into this new system, you're going to be needing to get this permission to talk. So if I change into the new system here, and I key up, I'm going to get a bonk the first time because it hasn't picked me up. So that's my bonk. That means the talk group is busy usually. Okay? You may get that also as an out of range, and we found out that out of range part when we were traveling out there and we were going in the grocery stores, and our radios, we could have the crew of 4 in there, and 2 of them would say out of range and 2 of them would be working just fine. That was an alignment issue that we'll talk about in just a minute. But it will, because this is essentially, it's a smart system, just like your cell phone is a smartphone. These are smart computers, and it will tell you when you're out of range. It's making you more aware of your situation. So you need to get that permission to talk, and it'll sound like this. Oops, that's your bonk, and now I got my permission to talk. Okay? You need to get that permission to talk every time. And the advantage of that is nobody can walk over you. You can't have 2 or 3 users all key up at the same time and start transmitting and walking over each other, because then all they hear out there is a bunch of mess. The third thing we have on here is what's called a timeout timer. That means if I get real long-winded, I'm stuck at 60 seconds. At 61 seconds, I'm going to hear this foghorn type sound, and it's going to be played either through the speaker, or if I'm plugged in my EasyComm, then I'll hear it in there, and all that means is it's quit transmitting. If I let go of the push to talk and I need to talk again, I just let go, rekey, and then I got another 60 seconds. Where this is really helpful is for somebody that's got that stuck mic. If you've got a bunch of stuff on the dash and it's pushed into your push to talk on your mic up there, got it stuck open, or you've got something strapped across your chest, say you're carrying in 2.5-inch hose or something like that, it's draped over your chest, it's hit your push to talk, and you've got that stuck mic in that fashion, it's only going to affect the fire ground for that 60-second operation there. Okay, your batteries, these are just like your batteries today. Brand new, out of the box, these things will last about 10 to 12 hours, and that's continuously being on, not the on-off stuff, but continuous constantly being on, and that's with transmitting and listening stuff for that 12 continuous hours. You do have a battery symbol strength on here on your display screen. You also have your signal strength, number of bars that you have there for that, for your strength as well. The thing about changing out your battery is these batteries do not develop a memory or anything like that. So if you just make a couple of runs and then you change out your battery after that, no problem. It's not going to ruin up the battery. They don't develop a memory. But if you let it get too low, then you start losing your features like your emergency call activation button and your ability to change talk groups. So you get down to below 10%, the knob is going to twist, but you're not going to be able to change talk groups and it won't change on your display. And then like any battery powered device, it will shut down until you get it recharged or put another battery in it. Main thing here is if it is showing an amber color on there and it says it's reconditioning, don't pull it out. That takes a good 10 to 12 hours for it to do, and you need to let it recondition because it'll ruin the battery. Your bank chargers have gotten more firefighter friendly. They've got you a display screen in there in addition to the color, so you don't have to just remember what the color is. It tells you what it's doing. So that amber is reconditioning. It'll say it on there. Your solid green, 100%, it's ready to go, and it'll say it. If it's a flashing green, it's between 90 and 100%, and it will, if you need it then, go ahead and take it. It'll let you know that that's where it's at. Solid red, it's charging. Say it's at 56%. You're about halfway there. It'll take about another hour, and then you're ready to go. If you need it because you're down to 10 or 20%, grab it. It's not going to hurt it. If it's a flashing red, that means it is a bad battery, and it will say bad battery on there. Mark it with some tape, take it down to the radio shop, and get you another battery. Just a quick reminder on your best radio communication practices. Your guideline says hold the radio 4 to 6 inches away. We don't do that anymore. This is going to be 1 to 2 inches away. It picks up better. But the other reason is you got 2 microphones on it. You got one on the front, and you got one on the back. So that way, what that second microphone does is it picks up the background noise and it cancels it out. They've got an algorithm in these things. So if I can't move away from my loud noise, which in our job we can't do a lot of the times, it's actually better for me to face it. And it doesn't matter if I'm using the lapel mic or I'm using this. The lapel mic, you want to take it off your shoulder and hold it in front of your mouth as well too. It'll pick you up, but now it's not going to cancel out that noise. So if I'm actually facing my noise and I'm transmitting on the front side, the back side mic is picking up that noise, flipping it in an algorithm to the exact opposite of what it interprets it, transmits that as well, and then only transmits what you hear is my voice, even though it's transmitting all those things. So the main thing is maintain your situational awareness, be aware of your surroundings, think about what you're going to say, and then key up and say it, and then let the next user say what they need to say. These radios are going to give us 2 big things here, intraoperability and interoperability. Interoperability is the ability to communicate with any other city agency that already has a radio. Our primary department is going to be HPD. But if we have the need to talk to aviation, sanitation, public works, the zoo, parks and recreation, whatever our need is, we can go to that talk group or whatever OEC tells us to go to, and then we can communicate with them. Interagency operability, we make mutual aid calls with other departments. We can communicate with them, or other departments making a mutual aid call with us. They will be able to communicate with us. And then setting down life flight is a thing that we commonly do. We would be going to other talk groups. Bottom line is, whoever it is you need to talk to, let OEC know who you need to talk to, and they'll tell you what talk group to go to communicate with them. Okay, issues in reprogramming issues. We had some problems, and basically what happened was the fire department and Motorola made assumptions on each other, and they had a failure to communicate effectively. And we know what happens when we make assumptions, and that's what happened. We had some issues. We had some problems. Essentially, we found out that, like we said about the grocery store thing, we had radios that were not properly aligned. The way we understand it is Motorola's standard practice is to ship these things without the alignment being done, and then before it goes out to the end user, then you do the alignment process. The fire department had looked at the contract and understood that they were going to be aligning these things every year for 5 years of the contract, thinking it was coming aligned. So when it got sent out, we thought it was already aligned and it was good to go for the user. Well, that wasn't the case. So again, that assumption thing. So that's why they had to bring close to 3,000 apparatus and handheld radios in and get them realigned. They also did some software updates, and we'll cover how these fleet map changes were done as well. So here's the fleet map. Some of the changes in the fleet map system is they took out that interim system. That was in Delta Alpha, if you remember from last summer. We were only in it for a couple of weeks. In Delta Bravo is where we were in that UHF system. Well, they moved that from Delta Bravo to Echo Bravo. The whole reason is you see it, it's the last one on your fleet map on the right-hand side there. When we get into that final system, that's going to disappear and it'll no longer be around. So it'll end up being to where our last thing is Echo Alpha. Special operations, they ended up in Delta Charlie. That was Homeland Security talk groups, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but they were operating out of a separate radio. Now it'll be in their same radio. And then these outside agencies, they put them all together. So here's a color slide showing you on the left, we're going to be over there in HFD East, West, and Med, but the stuff in blue is what they all moved together to where it was spread out. Now it's all together to where it's not interrupting our easy navigation through our stuff. And then in the yellow, we got HFD Special Ops. And that last one, Echo Bravo, that's showing that UHF in gray that will end up disappearing. So when we get into this final system, the majority of the time, you're going to be operating in Bank A. You're going to want to check your radio in the morning, and we're going to be operating in Bank A. So when you're looking at this fleet map, across the top in the orange, we've got the banks, A, B, C, D, E. We're going to be in Bank A. And then if you're on the east side of 45 or the east side of 288, you're going to be working on the east side. If you are west of 288 or west of 45 north, you're going to be on the west side. If you are south of I-10, you're going to be on the south side. If you're north of I-10, you're going to be in the north side. So those are going to be the 4 quadrants there. So HFD East is going to be Alpha Alpha, HFD West is going to be Alpha Bravo, and HFD Med is going to be Alpha Charlie. So checking out your radio, the main thing is make sure you're in Bank A. And not only that you're in Bank A, but when you're testing out your radio in the morning, you want to make sure that you are locked in Bank A. Because remember, that locking mechanism only changes that bank button, and you don't want to have a bad radio day. And we'll talk about what could constitute a bad radio day in just a minute here. So here's a big change for you. We got OEC 1. It used to be TAC 6, or is currently in the UHF system as TAC 6. We're moving it up to that #1 position for a reason, because it's going to give you the ability to communicate with a live dispatcher if you need to. If you're in that UHF system, and you flip it up to that #1 spot, you hear call after call after call being dispatched, and you can't talk to whoever that gatekeeper is down there. So if you're in that IDLH atmosphere and you can't see what your radio is saying, blindly you could turn it up counterclockwise to that #1 position, and now you're communicating with OEC. Okay? Here we have our fleet map, and now we've added a green line going across for OEC 1. We have it in 8 places on this fleet map here, okay? And we put it, it's not 8 different talk groups or 8 different consoles down at OEC. It's one talk group, and we have it going in those 8 places to make it easier to navigate. That's one of the great things about this, is that you can put anything anywhere you want and repeat it as many times as you want. So it makes it easier for the user to navigate through the radio. So here's a breakdown. We'll start with Alpha Alpha of what we're going to be doing on our daily routine, because we're going to be establishing a new daily routine. Right now we're used to operating off either TAC 2, TAC 3, or TAC 4. Now we're going to be adding another one in there. We're also used to having just 3 TAC groups, 5, 7, and 8. Now we're going to be adding 6 more in each quadrant. So if you see, we got OEC 1 up there in that #1 position. We've got citywide dispatch. It says it's not encrypted. That's because everything else is encrypted on here. Okay? So listening to runs on the scanner in the fire station, that's not going to happen for a while until they come out with a new scanner that can be programmed with encryption codes, and that's going to have to be done by the radio shop because they're not going to give us the encryption codes. Otherwise, they just no point in having them encrypted. So the radio shop is going to have to find these new scanners and that kind of stuff. So until that time rolls around, the only way we can listen to somebody else's fire is with a handheld in the fire station. So now we're going with 3s and 10s. That's going to be our new pattern. On this alpha side, we got northeast 3 and southeast 10. Those are your new, what we call radio operator talk groups. Okay? If we look at the alpha Bravo, we've got on the west side, we've got northwest 3 and southwest 10. So we got the mirror image. So if you're on 3 on the east side or the west side, we're doing the same thing on both sides. So we've gone from having those 3 talk groups, 2, 3, and 4, to where we've got we're taking essentially 25% of the radio communications off of each of those 3, creating that 4th talk group. So it should make communications easier for you on those routine calls where you're operating off of whichever talk group you're on. So up here we're on the northeast side because we are east of 45. And we're north of I-10, so that's going to put us working right here on Northeast Radio Operator 3. So if a box alarm comes in, you're monitoring on Alpha 2, you hear the call come in, you flip over to 3, Alpha 3, and if it's a box alarm, the incident commander is going to request a monitor talk group or a monitor TAC, and they're going to get either TAC 4 or TAC 9, top or bottom. We're not just going in numerical order because it's going to give us the expandability for this to work. So it's going to go to either 4 or 9. If you're on the south side, it's going to go to either 11 or 16, one of those 2 in there. So it gives us that expandability. So if you make a routine house fire, a routine apartment fire that doesn't expand, doesn't escalate to higher calls, then just like right now, it stays on that one monitor talk group, and until you tap it out, you're on that talk group. Once it gets tapped out, you're releasing the talk group and you're releasing being monitored, and you would revert back to, on the south side, back to 10, and on the north side, back to 3. Okay? But if it does escalate, now it gives that incident commander the ability to add more talk groups. Okay? So if you have that 211 that occurs, and let's use a fire that they had in the Heights a couple of days ago during the day. We had a 10-story high-rise that they had a fire on the 4th floor, okay? Middle of the day, so we're in the northwest quadrant there. So let's go look at the northwest quadrant. So if that fire were to occur today, they'd get dispatched on Alpha Bravo 2. They would respond on Alpha Bravo 3, and the incident commander requests a talk group. So they get a monitored TAC of TAC 4. So everybody goes to Alpha Bravo 4. Well, he's got this 211 coming. So he wants all 211 companies to stage at a certain point. He's going to designate staging to either a company or an officer. So he's got several district chiefs coming. He gave staging to a particular district chief, and he can request that staging talk group be set up. So OEC says, okay, use TAC 5 for staging. So you've got a district chief that's setting up staging there. You need somebody at the command post now for command to talk to staging because we're freeing it up. So you got your fire operations on 4, and on 5, now you've got staging going on. So command needs somebody at the command post that can listen because his ICT is helping him manage that fire. Now he needs another, either A, an uncommitted ICT, or B, he needs an uncommitted EEO, or C, he's going to end up getting an engine company and using the people off of there. He could use, if he's using an apparatus for staging, then he could have one person there for the staging and the other 3 go to the command post to help take these other talk groups up. He wants to set up a medical group because like in this high rise, he had a bunch of elderly people that might need assistance or might need medical issues. Set up TAC 6 for medical, okay? Again, 5 and 6 are not monitored by OEC. They're being monitored by the command post. It's up to them. Because here's a couple of things that don't change with getting all these new talk groups. OEC doesn't grow by any personnel at all yet. They've made the financial request. We're going to wait and see what happens, but the new fiscal year doesn't start till July 1st. So they're going to make the request for this increase in personnel. Because what operates TAC 5, 7, and 8 on the UHF system is 3 senior captains down there. So once 3 fires come in, not only do you run out of senior captains, but you've got no other talk groups for them to put them on. So in the UHF system, they get stuck on TAC 2, 3, or 4 to operate their fire, and they still got to deal with all the other radio traffic that's being dispatched on there. So now, if you get that 4th fire coming in the new system, you've got 24 talk groups that are available, so they're going to get a talk group. They're not going to have to be forced to deal with somebody that's making this sick call, or somebody making chest pain, or somebody has CPR, or all that stuff. They get their own TAC. It's not monitored. So OEC has made the request to get more senior captains down there as well, because remember, we've added a 4th talk group for daily operations. So they don't even have that extra body that they used to have for breaks and things like that to wiggle through there. So now they need to get at least another captain, possibly 2, and then at least a couple of senior captains, if not 3, so that they have enough of these talk groups, because we know that the city has more than 3 fires at one time. So that can happen. So what if we get to where we're in the new system and we have 5 working fires when number 6 comes in? Well, that's not going to be monitored. So now the command post has to monitor their own fire, and any requests they make have to go back to the original one. So going back to our example with District 6, they're responding on TAC 4, they set up staging on 5, they set up medical on 6. Okay, if they were not being monitored, their ICT would have to make all their communication needs through Alpha Bravo 3. And that would be, we need Cascade, we need a 3rd alarm, we need 2 EMS units, whatever the case may be. All those requests, that ICT or that incident commander, one of them would have to go back to Alpha Bravo 3 to make the request. Now, as soon as OEC gets a senior captain that's available to go on the console and monitor their fire group, then they're going to tell them, OEC to District 6, we are now monitoring your fire. Okay? And then normal operations would resume in that sense, that they're monitoring the situation, and the ICT doesn't have to go back to 3 anymore. But if it needs to escalate more, if they need more talk groups, they want a water supply group, they can pick another one. If they can, whatever they can think of to create talk groups or get the radio traffic off of the primary fire group. You know, if they want to set up a separate rehab for the firefighters from the medical group that they set up for the civilians, they can get another talk group for that. And it can just go on and on. Okay, so that covers